It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the 6 films of Friday the 13th of April, 2007. And we've got a various assortment of films here. We've got some horror movies, not even horror movies, but psychological thrillers. We have another Fast and Furious ripoff, a movie adaptation of a TV show that some people probably were expecting, some people maybe not, but still leads to a lot to talk about. But Molly Shannon also has a movie out this weekend. Her first big big feature leading role after leaving Saturday Night Live almost 6 years ago, I think. But we'll eventually get into those as we move along here. But let's talk about the biggest new release of the weekend. That's Shia LaBeouf in the movie that pretty much broke him out as a major Hollywood star. And starting this year in particular, this is Disturbia. I mean, you can tell what the movie is basically inspired by, Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window. And in this movie, this time around, instead of Jimmy Stewart, it's Shia LaBeouf playing the 17-year-old who's placed on house arrest for assaulting his schoolteacher and starts spying on his neighbors, believing that one of them is a serial killer. And it turns out it's David Morse, and if you've seen the movies that he's in, and he's been in since Leaving St. Elsewhere back in the day, yeah, he plays a lot of serial killer type of characters, or characters that have a for the most part, negative impacts in terms of his characters in general. But like I said before, this was the movie that kind of launched Shia LaBeouf as the next big Hollywood star that everyone was expecting him to do. And you know, when you have a movie produced by Steven Spielberg's company, and he's also doing Transformers and working on the next Indiana Jones movie, and then doing another movie with the same director, DJ Caruso. Yeah, it's not going to be surprising to see that this guy's going to take off at some point. And he did take off for a little bit of time, and then he kind of petered off a little bit, but actually, now that I think about it, I don't know what has Shia LaBeouf done recently that I could think of. Okay, he has done more movies than I thought he did. I mean, kind of after the last Transformers movie that Michael Bay did with him and Megan Fox in it, yeah, the series kind of petered. Actually, now that I don't even think Megan Fox was in the last Transformers movie. I should say the last of the Transformers trilogy, Dark of the Moon, and no, she was not in that movie, because I remember there was a falling out between her and Michael Bay for a little bit there, but back to Shia LaBeouf. Yeah, he's done mostly smaller scale movies, or movies that haven't been as successful. I mean, he was just recently in Megalopolis, but there was a time when everyone was setting him up to be the next big movie star, and for a little bit between 2007 and maybe around 2014, 2015, he was that guy. And a movie like Disturbia really does show you the guy's acting chops, because he really does shine in this movie in general. I mean, this is not the same kid that was on Even Stevens. This is a guy that this is an actor who is really putting his all into it overall, and it's a really good movie overall. It's a really good modernized version of Rear Window with a lot of really good talent in the young cast. Sarah Romer's really good in here. Aaron Yo, who would later go on to star in stuff like 21 and Friday the 13th. And David Morse, like I said before, the guy plays creepy serial killers and people with negative intentions very well. I mean, the guy's been doing it for so many years. Carrie Ann Moss is also in the movie. Viola Davis is also in here as well. And it's a really good movie, a really intense film that really has a lot of things that we've seen done to death before so many times, but it does it in its own unique stylistic way, working with modern times and working on a setup here that doesn't completely rip off Rear Window, but takes a lot of chances and liberties with it, and creates a film that is very well done and well put together. And it's a really good movie. It's definitely a movie that shows Shia LaBeouf's got the acting chops to really become the next great actor, and DJ Caruso's a pretty damn good director too. I mean, he showed up with a couple of movies he had done beforehand. I really like Two for the Money, and his next movie, Eagle Eye, I think was pretty good too. But yeah, this is really good. This is a really good movie. Probably his best overall film as a director, I think. Yeah, I would say probably his best overall film as a director. For a guy that went from directing films like Taking Lives to go from that to this, it's easily a step in the right direction. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, definitely check this one out. It's definitely well worth a recommendation. Disturbia. Now let's get to a psychological thriller that's not that good, even though it has too many good stars and people involved in it that should know better. This is James Foley's Perfect Stranger. The same man that made Glengarry Glen Ross made this movie, one of the great dramas of all time. Oh, how far he's fallen in the 15 years since then. Halle Berry stars as Rowena Price, a muckraking reporter for a New York paper. When a story about a closeted gay senator who preaches family values is spiked, she quits and soon finds herself investigating the grisly murder of a childhood friend. Her friend has been dubbed by an ad executive, Harrison Hill, played by Bruce Willis, so he's Rowena's prime suspect. Rowena gets a job at an ad agency as a temp, and she's soon the object of Hill's attentions. She's helped in her subterfuge by Miles Haley, a friend of the paper, played by Giovanni Ribisi, who has a secret thing for her. Everyone, it seems, has secrets, including Hill, who must keep his affairs from his wife. Her money fuels his lifestyle. Murder will out. Yeah, this is one of those movies where, kind of like with Premonition the month before, it's a movie that has one of those twist endings that they hype up as this twist ending you'll never see coming, and you see it coming and it's just like, wow, this is absolutely horrible. Not as bad as the one in Premonition, but no, it's pretty. It's just as bad. It's not. I mean, it's almost. I should say almost as bad. But then again, this movie just has nothing of value to it whatsoever. And like I said, James Foley has made a lot of good movies, and this is definitely not one of them. Halle Berry and Bruce Willis have done a lot of great stuff. Giovanni Ribisi's made a lot of great stuff. This movie is really, really stupid. It's a movie that tries to sell itself as this psychological thriller, but it also wants to sell itself as an erotic thriller too. And yeah, you don't get it. There is no chemistry between Halle Berry and Bruce Willis in this movie at all. And that's, for two seasoned actors like them to do that, that is just such a missed opportunity on so many levels. And yeah, I can't really say too much more about this one. This one's not a very good movie. It's a pretty bland film overall. It's very generic, it's lackluster, it's not a good movie whatsoever, and you just expect so much more with the talent on board here, and it just takes the cheap way out when it's all said and done. There's nothing of value to this film whatsoever, so. Not much more to say about that one. Avoid Perfect Stranger like the plague. So with that said, let us move on to our next movie, which is Pathfinder. So many things wrong with that trailer alone that just tells you everything that you need to know to not see this movie. A Viking boy is left behind after his clan battles a Native American tribe. Raised within the tribe, he ultimately becomes their savior in a fight against the Norsemen. He would be called Ghost, and he's with a group of Viking coloniers who planned to exterminate the local population. Their dragon ship was somehow destroyed with the passengers brutally killed, leaving Ghost as the traumatized sole survivor. Yeah, this is one of those movies where you just it's 20th Century Fox looked and said, what do we have here? What can we find that's a property and we can make a quick buck off of it? Well, we have this graphic novel, we have this movie that was originally based off of a Norwegian film, but we could sell it as a graphic novel adaptation. Okay, let's just do that, because nobody had ever heard of Pathfinder before this, and nobody remembers Pathfinder before this. And it's hard to believe that this is the guy that would turn his career around playing two iconic characters in Dr. McCoy in the Star Trek movies by J.J. Abrams, and then later as Judge Dredd. Who would have thought that this guy would turn his career around? But yeah, Carl Urban, he's got a lot of personality to him, but this is one of those movies where it's just like, yeah, this is just not worth it. Because even with him trying his best to save the film, it's a lazy film in general. It's a film that is really lackluster in terms of what kind of a story it wants to tell. The strong, brutal, gory violence that they advertise in the trailer, it's nothing spectacular. It's nothing amazing. It's just generic stuff. And that's not how you're going to sell a movie in general. And not surprisingly, this movie was a massive failure at the box office. It only made back $30 million of its $45 million budget, but it at least made back $22 million in DVD sales, so I guess they made back somewhat of their profits. But who thought that this was going to be any kind of success whatsoever? Honestly. Like, yeah, this is just not a good movie. It's a lackluster movie. The action's not that interesting. The visuals aren't that impressive. The acting's pretty bad. It's just not a good movie. So yeah, you can avoid Pathfinder. And you can also avoid our next movie too, which is another Fast and Furious clone. This is Redline. It's so much of a Fast and Furious clone, they actually had to take the original title of the movie because of the Fast and Furious to sell it. I mean, no joke. This was a movie that was literally the original work. That the title of this was originally the working title for the Fast and the Furious, and This is a movie that is just so much just a bad knockoff of that. The film's plot centers around a street racing circle funded by a group of multimillionaires who wage millions of dollars over their high-powered sports cars. There are no real stars in this movie in general. No big directors in particular here. If the biggest name in this movie is Chloe Lane from Days of Our Lives, it's not. That's probably not a good sign in general. Nadia Bajoran, by the way, is her name, and beautiful woman, but good. But yeah, that's the only reason they have her in this movie, because she's a beautiful looking woman. She looks great in spandex and tight pants. So yeah, let's bring her in here. And yeah, you thought Biker Boys and Torque were the last Fast and Furious ripoffs we get? Oh no! It's just the beginning here. But what's interesting about this is that the movie itself is largely forgotten, but the story behind the movie and how it got funded still is very much around. No joke. This movie's more notable for the fact that it was funded by subprime loans issued by the producer Daniel Sadek's company, Quick Loan Funding, and closed its doors in the wake of the subprime mortgage crisis that would take place a couple years later, and actually was featured on a CNBC special that was literally about the excess of pre-meltdown mortgage markets in the United States. So this movie it's one of those movies that has a reputation not because of what happened is of the legacy of the movie itself, but because of just the fact that this movie really just was just like made by everything about it just felt like it was a plot. And I find this pretty hilarious. Cartoon Network sued Sadak for failing to pay the U.S. $845,000 advertising fee. Like, Cartoon Network sued this movie. This is not a movie that should be anywhere near involved with Cartoon Network, but lo and behold, that's exactly what happened. And yeah, you could just tell this movie was just such a clusterfuck of a film. It has no positive reviews from critics. It's been considered one of the worst car movies of all time, and it has this notorious legacy behind it. Just everything about this movie just feels like it's so wrong. It's so badly put together, and now it's starting to make more sense why the biggest star of the movie is from a soap opera of all things. I mean, granted, yeah, Eddie Griffith and Tim Matheson are in here too, but they're not really big stars in general. No, at least not now they aren't, or especially around this time. But yeah, this is a bad movie. This is a really, really terrible movie. Not quite as bad as Biker Boys or Torque, but definitely very much up there in general. So how about we go back to some, I won't say great movies, but better movies than you would think they were. Let's take a look at Aqua Teen Hunger Force, the movie. Or I'm sorry, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, movie film for theaters. I mean, when I think of a movie about Aqua Teen Hunger Force being produced by Adult Swim, that's kind of the trailer I expect to see for a movie like this. Aqua Teen Hunger Force, movie film for theaters. This is, of course, a feature film adaptation of the Adult Swim TV series Aqua Teen Hunger Force, in which you have Master Shake, Frylock, and Meatwad, better known as the Aqua Teens, where the homies say ho and the girlies want to scream, as they join forces with the Plutonians and the cybernetic ghost of Christmas past from the future to prevent a piece of exercise equipment from creating destruction, all while the Aqua Teens must puzzle together their existence and search for their creator. Again, a plot that feels very much in line with Aqua Teen Hunger Force in general. And yeah, it's very important that you go into this movie knowing what Aqua Teen Hunger Force is, because if you go into this with the mindset of with little to no knowledge about what this movie is about or what these characters are, then you're gonna really feel like you just wasted an hour and a half of your time. I was lucky enough to actually go see this movie. I unfortunately had to drive out to a theater out by, it's a further away theater than the theater I was usually going to. I had to go out to Pittsburgh Mills because that was the only theater that was showing it, but they were only showing it at nighttime. So I went there to like a 7:30 screening of it, and to be honest, there was a decent amount of people there in general, and yeah, it was a good fun time overall. And yeah, watching it again all these years later, I still kind of enjoy the hell out of it. Like I said, you need to go into the Aqua Teen Hunger Force series in general knowing what kind of craziness you're going into, because Aqua Teen Hunger Force has a lot of craziness to it, and so much of this is in this movie. Nothing about this movie will make any sense to newcomers. If you know the lore of the show, if you know exactly what you're going into, you can have the time of your life watching it. But if you want my honest opinion, looking back on it now, I will say that the animation overall definitely doesn't feel like it's worth seeing on a big screen like this. I feel like this isn't as epic as it could be. I mean, the sequel they did not too long ago, Aqua Teen Forever Plantasm, I think is a much better movie in general in terms of like the scope and scale. It still keeps the appreciation and the lore of what makes Aqua Teen Hunger Force so fun, and I think it has a much better animation budget right from the get-go. Like, you could tell they put a lot more effort into it, a lot more animation is put into it in general, and at least has a reason to exist that could have existed on a big screen in general. But like I said before, with Aqua Teen Hunger Force, you need to go in knowing what exactly that you're going in for, and if you go in there knowing what you're going in for, if you like the show, you're going to have the hell of a time with it. If you're not a fan of the show, I'd say step away. But it was pretty fun seeing this on the big screen for the first time and going back to it not too long ago, and still enjoying it, although I will say it's definitely not as good as the sequel, Plantasm, which I think is a much better movie in general, but nevertheless, it's Aqua Teen Hunger Force, where the homies say hurl and the girlies want to scream. Number one in the hood, G. So, yeah, take that for what you will. That's Aqua Teen Hunger Force, called a movie film for theaters. Let's go ahead and wrap the show up by taking a look at our last film here, Mike White's Year of the Dog, starring Molly Shannon. So Year of the Dog tells the story of Molly Shannon, who's a woman who goes from having one pet dog at home to becoming a vegan and an animal rights activist. She forms a relationship with Peter Skarsgård. You also have Laura Dern, Regina King, John C. Reilly. This is written and directed by Mike White, who had done School of Rock before this, and of course would later go on to create shows like The White Lotus, as well as work on a ton of different projects, including Illumination's recent two films, Migration and Despicable Me 4. Migration is easily the better of the two movies, but yeah, this is a really good movie, and for Molly Shannon, who hadn't really done a whole lot of leading film work after she had left Saturday Night Live in 2001, you would still see her in some things, like in some TV shows, some movies, but I believe this was her first major film starring role since Superstar. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think I am. I think this is the first big leading role she's had in a movie since Superstar came out in 1999, so it's been 8 years, and the movie actually is a lighthearted, fun little comedy. All the characters are really good to watch. I like the chemistry between Molly Shannon and Peter Skarsgård. You got talents like Laura Dern, Regina King, and John C. Reilly. I mean, they usually don't ever turn in bad performances. And the dogs are cute too. I mean, who doesn't love dogs, honestly? I mean, what can you say, man? This is a film that is it's very much a fun, lighthearted comedy. It definitely is very quirky. It has a lot of great things about it, from the comedy to the dramatic elements. It's a really good movie. It's one I really do recommend a lot. It's a very good film. Not bad for a directorial debut from the guy who wrote School of Rock. Yeah, so that is Year of the Dog. And so with all of that said, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. Now, the next time we meet, we take a look at 4 more movies, including Ryan Gosling in another movie, Anthony Hopkins, and starring in Fracture. We also have Luke Wilson and Kate Beckinsale starring in the thriller Vacancy. Easily the best movie of the weekend, Nick Frost and Simon Pegg reuniting once again in Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz. And Adam Brody from the OC, and a pretty stacked ensemble with Kristen Stewart and Meg Ryan among the cast in The Land of Women. So we'll take a look at those 4 movies on the next episode. That'll be coming up on tomorrow's show. But until then, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and also don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, and notification button, and that bell, because you get updates on when new videos come out, and we do post here every day. And stick around, because coming up on Time About the Movies Flashback, we're flashing back to September 11th, 1987 with 4 films: The Curse, A Prayer for the Dying, Witness in the War Zone, and I've Heard the Mermaids Singing. So we'll take a look at those 4 movies from 1987 coming up on Time About the Movies Flashback. That'll be coming up as soon as I post this up, so please stick around, because we will be right back with more right after this.